me, Timothy Nyangweso, every Wednesday live in our studios in the heart of Kampala. We have conversations that have analysis, explanation, but not every truth is fact and not every fact is truth. Every Wednesday, 10 p.m. on your public broadcaster.
All on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. As we export peace to other countries, as we speak of Ukraine and Russia, we look at that as our Samaria. What is happening to our Jerusalem? Specifically, if we talk about Kasese and Pondwe, when we look at the incident that happened there. The ADF has been on the lips of this country since 1995. Incidents in Chichwamba Technical Institute in 98 there. 80 killed, 100 abducted. But here we're talking about what recently happened. Has the MO of the ADF changed in the past days? Because there were bombings, there were assassination attempts. We're talking about General Katumba Wamala, and then we see them go back to schools. We see them taking food. What does that mean? We look at two aspects tonight. One is the incident that happened in Kasese, but two, we also look at envoys from Africa going all the way to Russia and Ukraine. They were there on Friday in Ukraine. They were on Saturday in Russia trying to bring peace there. The peace they export, do we have it at home? Or is this a product we're looking at from somewhere else? But before we do that, let me introduce the panel. Today, we have an expert panel that is going to be explaining some of these things as they have happened. And also, our condolences go out to the families that are bereaved with the losses there. First and foremost, we have Dr. Sarah Sari, who is an academician, researcher, a scientist, but most importantly, is a Dean of Studies of Gender and Women Affairs there. We also look at Honorable Ojara Martin Mapenduzi, who is a Member of Parliament for Gulu West. Furthermore, he was also an LC5, but went further to make impact in Gulu there. We look further to his career, especially his new portfolio, which we'll be congratulating him in a few. But to have context in our discussion here, let's look at what Honorable Dr. Crispus Chionga has to say about some of the things that happened in Kasese, especially putting context on the issues there.
Has happened in Kasese. The school attack is regrettable.
That massacre where we lost 37 school children and their managers and an old woman over 100 years and also her children is highly regrettable. And again, I take this opportunity to repeat my commiseration, my condolences to the families that were immediately affected, but also to the rest of the Ugandans.
Doctor, this is the third time such an attack is taking place in let me say, Rwenzori sub-region. You remember the St. John's Seminary incident, and you remember the one of is it Kichwamba of Fort Portal, and now we have the one of Mpondwe. Are there lessons to be learned, especially from the security forces?
The lesson we need to learn is that ADF, which started in Uganda, building on Unaru in 1989, has since grown in two ways. Number one, has perfected the art of radicalization. They take young children from Bugiri, from Mayuge, from Kasese, from Chazanga, and they go into their minds and change them. Then ADF is now part of the Al-Qaeda network. This is what our population needs to know. The ADF is a radicalized international terrorist force. They are linked right from West Africa with Boko Haram. You come, I think even Kony now is part of that formation, you come to ADF. ADF is now even in Mozambique. And you go up to the Gulf, Al-Shabaab. It's the same group.
But we have neighbors here like Kenya and Rwanda, and we don't see much of ADF activities in Tanzania and so on. But why are they mainly disturbing Uganda?
Yes, you are right to say we appear to be taking the big blunt ourselves here in Uganda. That reason is first geographical. Uganda neighbors Eastern DRC. Eastern DRC, because it's not a governed space and is forested, it provides the right place for terrorists like this.
So that was context by Ambassador Dr. Crispus Chionga, especially what is happening there. But first and foremost, our condolences go out to the families that have lost loved ones. 37 to 38 children passed on, students there, and 2 residents also were killed, especially in this incident, even as we're getting to their premises there. But you can be part of the show. Go to our socials, both on Facebook and YouTube. We're also on Twitter. Just get there, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines, and you'll be able to get in touch with us. Get to the number 0709 62 95 20. We'll be able to get you there. Drop your message and let us know what you think about the discussion here. First and foremost, want to apologize. General Kulaije couldn't make it because of his work schedule, but also Captain Francis Babu also got ill and could not make it here. But we have the Minister of State for ICT and National Guidance, Honorable Geoffrey Kabianga, online there. We'll be getting to him in a short while, but I want to say good evening to the panelists that are in the studio, then get to Honorable Kabianga there. Good evening, Doctor. Thank you for coming.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Honorable Mapenduzi, it's good to see you. I think first and foremost, congratulations are in order. Now Chairperson of Public Service and Local Government. Congratulations.
Thank you, my brother.
And good evening.
Good evening and greetings to you, our viewers.
Thank you very much. Now let's get some context, especially being that Honorable Geoffrey Kabianga, the Minister of State for ICT and National Guidance, is in Kasese to be able to give us really what is on ground and let us know, give us an update on everything happening there. Honorable Kabianga, if you're with us, would like to engage you right now. And he's on Zoom, and we'll be getting into that. Also, Charles Romshana will join us later on in the show. Honorable Kabianga, good evening. How are you? I know it's late there, but thank you for deciding to have a conversation with us. What is the status in Kasese, and what can you give us as fact of what happened last week on Friday? Unfortunately, there's a technical glitch as the team behind there gets things sorted out. Let's get to the gentleman and lady in the studio to be able to have this discussion. Honorable Mapenduzi, I'll start with you, and to be able to give us perspective, especially the incident. Let's even build it. This outfit, ADF, was formed here in the Rwenzori region, was flashed out to DRC there, but they had an incident in '98 there. Kichwamba Technical Institute, 80 killed, 100 abducted. They have also been, especially in 2021, we had issues of the attempt on General Katumba Omala. We went on to see them trying to, cause an incident at the late Lokech's barrio, God rest his soul in peace. Then we went on to see, the twin bombings between Parliament and CPS there. And now, a few years later, seeming to go back to the MO of '98, now in 2023. What are your thoughts about this?
First, I would like to join you and the rest of the country in joining in condoling with the families, those that have lost their children. These are our children. It is a very painful moment for the country. It is a big loss to the nation. And this is something that should have not happened. For some of us who come from northern Uganda, this kind of very absurd situation remind us the kind of experiences we have had in northern Uganda. I'm sure you recall when a number of schools got attacked and several students got abducted. The case of Sir Samuel Becker in Gulo, several students got abducted, including one of my cousin brothers. Unfortunately, he never came back. Actually, during the peace talks, for some of us who got involved, I tried very much to trace whether he was still alive. And there were no signs until recently, when by God's grace we got someone who knew him and was able to tell us the story of how he died. We know a school like Secretariat in Gulu was also attacked, and several students got abducted. The Abore girls' story you have read, you could have heard about it, very painful. And many schools, including primary schools, the Atiak massacre, where several students from a technical school were massacred. Hundreds of people lost their lives, and in a similar kind of. So when we experience such a thing again, especially now, the time when Uganda is experiencing some kind of peace, it is extremely painful. The other thing that makes it even more painful is that our country, Uganda, is involved in several efforts elsewhere. Uganda is highly respected in the region for the role we are playing as a country. When there was a challenge in South Sudan, the UPDF got involved in calming down the situation in South Sudan. The UPDF has been in Congo. The UPDF, is in Somalia, and we have a respectable, highly celebrated force. And then back at home, we have here when our children are, murdered in cold blood. So this is a very painful situation. And you begin to ask so many questions. One, at least all of us know that in Uganda, there are structures that have been established, right from village level, intelligence structures. The PISOs, the GISOs, the RISOs, and the DISOs, and all these structures are there. But leave alone that, we also have a population that is supposed to be vigilant, okay? Because the safety and the security of every citizen is the responsibility of everyone. So you begin then to have to ask so many questions. What about the people? Is this something that could have been detected? Is there some laxity? Do we have a gap? You begin to have a lot of questions. So it is sad that this has happened, but I think this should also be, it should ring a bell in our head that probably there is much that we need to do. Okay. Because just as you gave the examples of what happened to General Katumba Wamala and several other cases, and the explosion, the bombs in the city, just next to Parliament. These are indicators that are not good. And so there is need for the security agencies to reflect deeply and begin to see, because Things to do with security and safety are things that you cannot take for granted, and there is no day you will think everything is okay. And so as we struggle to make contributions in the other countries, in Congo and elsewhere, we need to know that such contributions as well attract a lot of problem internally. So the question of how do we internally reorganize ourselves and make sure we build infrastructures that can help to, you cannot avoid having bad people coming to plan, evil things and causing such havoc on the population. But at least you can do whatever it takes to either prevent or manage such a situation. So it is unfortunate that we have lost lives, very innocent children, children who would grow in future and serve this nation, make contributions, but it's sad. So that's what I look. But also the other thing that we need to strongly look at is the role of the UPDF in the region. When the UPDF went to DRC Congo, many people gave their different opinions and all that. But you see, as long as we have issues in South Sudan, as long as we have issues in Congo, we have issues with our neighbors, if we don't have peace with the neighbors, we will end up having problem at home. Okay. Because bad people will always use whatever situation with the neighbors and try to disorganize that disorganize us internally. So there is need to continue supporting the efforts in the neighborhood, in the region generally, but also there is need to do much more internally so we can have, our people live safely, and when there are such things, this can be managed.
Thank you very much, Honorable. We still have Honorable Geoffrey Kabyanga, the Minister of State for ICT and National Governance, on. So let me get to him. But Charles Rumshana, thank you for joining us. We'll be introducing you in a short while there. Honorable Kabyanga, if you're with us there, please give us the facts of what is on ground, what really happened on Friday, but most importantly, what's the update now, especially with the pursuit of UPDF, of the ADF assailants that left the country. Political analyst, good evening, sir.
God of all creation is great.
Thank you so much. Let me get to Dr. Sarah. Doctor, when you look at this incident, and especially the sensitivity that we talked about Somalia a few weeks ago, the pacification of Sudan, we going into Operation Shuja, 5,000 peacekeeping troops sent to DRC. What is your reading of this incident in Kasese, in this secondary school, almost 20 years after, and now we're having another incident in the same region, the Rwenzori region?
Yeah, thank you very much, Timothy, and good evening, our viewers. When you talk about this incident, first of all, I would like to send condolences to the nation, to the families, to the school, to the district, and to all humanity, because this incident was very, very grim. It is also very scary. And why is it very scary? It attacked the most vulnerable people that you'd say in society. I have tried to make sense of what the thing was all about, and you really cannot make much sense. Of course, we know it's ADF, and we have been told it's ADF, but the question is, what are their demands? What do they want? And unlike previous terror strategies where you have guns and you have bombs and you have this one is very scary because of the nature in which it was carried out. The whole issue of the machetes and people being stabbed and people being slaughtered. And there's a new video which came out today of what they claim to be the fate of the students they abducted. And the video is very scary. I mean, about these kids who I think after having carried food, we are told, to a certain place, they are then slaughtered like goats. It's not a thing you'd imagine you would look at. So it's a very, very bad situation. And we have had ADF with us for a number of years. The issue is it's not clear what actually they want. Okay, I know many times when terror groups come up, you have an ideological angle. You also have claims that are made around which the ideology becomes the vehicle to drive those claims. And those claims are either claims of economic marginalization, social marginalization, ethnic oppression. But you see, you don't seem to get this with the ADF. They seem to be a people who have positioned themselves somewhere, of course also advantaged by the fact that that border is very long, it is very rugged, not many places are policed by the very nature that a lot of it is flora, fauna, it's virgin territory, and would love to keep it like that for environmental purposes. But then you also have that then being used against us, okay? In that the enemy then hides inside there and then comes out and wreaks havoc. And the nature of these Great Lakes things, like mainly, maybe even also what happened in northern Uganda, as Honorable Mapenduzi has said, and this very one, is that it seems to go for the communities where people are. I would not really understand, but it is a bit comprehensible if people go for those who they consider to be enemies, to consider to be foreigners. But if, as Honorable Chiyonga has said, people are being picked from different parts of the country for radicalization to mete out havoc on people who are basically living peacefully, people who are not responsible for their grievances, it is really unfair. Because, for example, out of this massacre, what has been the statement? I know when terrorists hit other places, they release a statement. We either want you to leave, we either want this change, we either want this, if you don't do this, we are coming back. What has been the statement in this? There has not been a statement. All we have seen is the massacre, okay, in a school. And we hope in future we shall get the statement. But there's no statement. So it just then becomes an act of brutality. And for how long will this brutality take place? And to what extent were the people who received the brutality deserving to get that brutality? What crime had they committed? These were children. But the other thing which actually becomes a problem is when you then hear stories reported in the news that the attackers spent, is it 2 days or 3 days in the community? That before the attackers attacked, there had been an attack on a market in the DRC. So if the attackers stayed in the community for 2 days or for 3 days, what did we do about reporting them? What could the community have done to prevent? And what this really means is we all have to take part in this thing of security. We all have a role to play in alerting those that are charged with maintaining security that there are people who are here, but we don't know who they are. We don't know what their intentions are. I remember in the past when we used to have the Mayumba Kumi system, if someone arrived, I mean, somehow the LC1, the equivalent of the LC1 now, would be informed of that this person has come under the mission. So, first of all, how were people able to know that the attackers had spent 2 days there before the attack? Then if they knew that they were not part of that community, what then should they have done? I think then this emphasizes the need for things like community policing, but also for those who are charged with investigating these kinds of things, to get to the bottom of the matter. What is the mission? What is the statement? What is the grievance? We cannot always just come back and say, okay, ADF now killed 80 in Kichwamba, now have killed 40 or 60 in this community. Tomorrow we don't know what they are going to do. So I think for me that is my initial thoughts about it.
And Doctor, let me stay with you, especially with the thoughts you put there, with the 2 days that the community talks about. But also, there was a travel advisory by the Americans to its citizens not to be able to come here. If this information was really available, like it has been said in the news, but also this advisory, who should we be holding accountable? Because every Ugandan life matters, and these are 40 gone.
Yeah, thank you, Timothy. You see, when an advisory comes, it is an advisory, and sometimes it's in general terms. It is not that very specific. So if there was a travel advisory against coming to Uganda, how would we have known that it means they're going to hit in Kasese? It could mean they're going to hit in Busia, or it could mean they're going to hit in Kampala. So I know there are those who are qualified and trained enough to make sense of travel advisories, and I'm not one of them. But for me, my thoughts are the travel advisories, one, abroad, and then two, we tend to think that these travel advisories are for a particular sector of people. And I know, like the people in Kasese, I don't think they were aware of this travel advisory. All they knew is people are amongst us, but also maybe that kind of community being a border always has people coming in and going out, okay? So I don't know whether first of all, I don't know how much the travel advisory went, but also we have to remember that the travel advisory by the American government came out at the time when we had passed the anti-homosexuality bill. And a lot of it was saying, the travel advisory to Uganda was, be careful because you could be suspected, you could be arrested. If you're suspected, you could be arrested. First of all, if you're gay, you land in trouble. But also if you're suspected, you could land in trouble. But also you could be framed and you land in trouble. So I think most people focused around there, okay? But I don't know, the security forces probably would have known that probably this means an attack, but the general public, we took it as a reaction towards the anti-gay bill, and maybe we thought it like that. But at the end of the day, I think those who are most trained, the question should go to those who are most trained to do these kinds of things and make sense of it.
Okay, before we get to Honorable Kabyanga, Charles, let me bring you into this conversation. One of the things is you were an intelligence officer, you understand this terrain, but also there has been spats of issues there. Arrested people in Nansana claimed to be ADF. Also the different incidents that happened when the president called on to them to be able to attack security installations. Police installations were attacked, army stations were attacked. When you look at this, how can we, is this the MO of ADF? Is this another outfit? What rebel outfit is this? We had the Uganda National Change for Coalition. Who is this, and where are they attacking students?
You see, you have to define certain variables. One, the definition of the security challenge. So are you defining that now? Or you are defining incidences, you are defining operations, you are defining parts of the whole. The second one, then if you define, then you define the hardware and the software. Yes, but this is done by intelligence first. And when you're doing intelligence, you also have to look at the consumer. Who is going to consume this intelligence? Of course, certainly who is the policy maker? And what is the character of the consumer, the policy maker? So in our own situation, and of course this consumer, this policy maker will relate to the two, the software and the hardware. Because the one who purchases weaponry, is the one who will develop the military, is the one who will handle the software, which is the budget, the politics, the mobilization, the mass mobilization of the population, etc. Now, from my perspective, I have a huge conflict in this, because I think I'm in a different world in relation to the existing narrative. As you said, because I was an intelligence officer, of course we have very deadly law. So I don't know how I will debate this in relation with that law that prohibits us sharing what we knew. But it brings me in as a character, because I've also paid the price in pursuit of truth in relation to the consumer of this intelligence. That's the president. Because this is what I know about him. That if he has the correct definition of the problem, he has the correct facts, you will have the best decision. That I know of him. But if you do not define the problem well, he will enter on your definition, but may discover the problem himself later, and then design a different solution. But in which case then he is overworked. So he becomes the intelligence, he becomes everything. So with this force you are facing, I wrote papers. That was before the collapse of Gaddafi. Because we had intelligence from my sources. I got intelligence Gaddafi was going to be overthrown. I got intelligence they were going to attempt to overthrow Assad of Syria. And I also got intelligence they were going to attempt to overthrow Bashir. So I wrote papers in relation to our national survival. What would be the implications if, because for them they were looking at how to secure themselves against those who are going to destroy them. But because of Amin, you remember Amin related with Gaddafi and related with that infrastructure. So we had assets there. I got assets there. So when I wrote those papers, they were dismissed. You see, we had the top management to read through, said, but I think, Ramsha, these are your opinions. You get, because you see, for a president to develop an infrastructure, one, for intelligence gathering in relation to that problem, it will also relate to the policy of recruitment and training, which kind of personnel. If you're talking about ambassadors, the diplomats, which kind of diplomats will you send? What should they target to pick, etc. Now, when chaos happened there, I don't want to go through it. Now, when the reality now begins coming in, so you see an attack on Central Africa. You remember? The Bozize, the anti-Bozize force, the Seleka.
The Seleka.
Yes, so now then we intervene. But when we were intervening, had we picked the intelligence that led to the collapse of Gaddafi and the others, and how the remnants of Gaddafi, the remnants of Bashir now, the remnants, the intelligence of Syria would relate to us since we were perceived as a front of the West. Because you see, it has a cost to it. If you are perceived as a front against Islamic fundamentalism, then you have to prepare for it. You don't see it and then mourn later. So now you see later the shift in policy. I think that time was announced by Mr. Mhozi Kainerugaba that we would now leave Central Africa to reinforce our defenses against in the Rwenzori area. And that brings in now the definition of the advance of the force, or the definition of the force that overthrew Bozize, what we would call the Seleka. Did we have elements there? The initial conversation was, there is LRA, and I think it ended with that, if you remember. But that force advanced into Congo, and we are now contending with it at the border. Now, that was one aspect. The second aspect, I was also involved in monitoring the smuggling of weapons. And that was also a massive failure. And I've talked to a number of friends who are saying, but Ramshana, why don't we come and we work together or talk to? And I said, no, we should need to write papers to the president, informing the president where we failed. Let me talk to you. That the NRA and Mr. Museveni had obliterated insurgency. So what went wrong that they reorganized? Because to reorganize means we failed.
Who is reorganizing?
The insurgency. You see, there is when insurgency in Congo had been declared completely destroyed. And that's factual. It had been destroyed, no doubt about it.
All 120
you see,
outfits there.
You see, for an insurgency to reach even 10, there is an infrastructure you must have. The one who will recruit, where the recruited person will pass, the security of that recruited person, where the person will be trained from to become a soldier, mobilization of weaponry, and then construction of the intelligence system, deployment of that intelligence system. It's a whole complex system, and Mr. Museveni had destroyed it. That I know for a fact. I am not discussing the operations relating to the destruction of what forces were in Congo. No, I am relating to the reorganization.
Okay.
Right? So they reorganized. And they reorganized because the intelligence system betrayed Mr. Museveni. Of course, he also betrayed it. Because the question is, did he act? Yes, he's been acting at administrative level. You change the director general, you dismiss this, you do this, yes. But is that sufficient? There are certain other things prior we need to look into if we but anyway. So you have a reorganization of this force, and they are now active at the border. So the question is, do you have the proper definition of the reorganized force? So how can someone who failed in monitoring reorganization be the one to advise the president in countering the reorganized force? You get? You have that contradiction, and I have had the conversations also with Mr. Kirabakandwanaho, General Sare, on this, and my challenge to him was that you need to do deep thinking and break through the policy formulation systems of the insurgency. Right? For you are now dealing with the outcomes of part of their thought processes. Yes, attack of children, attack of this, and you are dealing with those. But what is the intention? Why the children? Whoever is attacking them, whoever is involved in this, why? So you may even find that by discussing it, you have achieved his objective. Yes, but by pop praying, the objective is achieved. And then the means to execute that operation. Because the means to execute it would then define the construction of the capability to counter him.
Okay.
Now we do not have those, because you have the same collapsed elite or that same infrastructure, because you may have removed them administratively, but then you retain the infrastructure, the nature of infrastructure, and you are dealing with very closed societies that you cannot challenge internally. For us, we are from the external, brought in by the president, but even then we failed. We failed. You had people like Idro. You know, remember Philip Idro? He was Director General and he had problems with the internal security organization because the group he formed was. Then you had Tumukunde. You remember, you also had a lot of problems with them, so we are the last lot, I think, with Procor and the others who did exit.
As you conclude, Charles.
So whereas you have these internal contradictions within, you have reorganization of groups that were defeated. Call it EFM, call it FEDEMO, call it LRI, whatever you want to call them. Call it ADF, that were defeated, and therefore they have a host of experience as to why they failed. For you, you do not have a mechanism of where you sit to discuss why you have gone wrong, what your weaknesses are. So the only thing now you do is to do fire brigade. They have attacked here, and then you by the way, even don't have a coherent mechanism of response in mobilizing the population. Because if you look at our political architecture, the current architecture you have is not what can respond to the challenges we have. Whether it's in the opposition, whether it is in the NRM caucus, I doubt. So you find that, therefore, the only existing infrastructure that you would have that would counter this is small, is overburdened, burdened with the provision of sugar, burdened with the provision of these things of our stomach. So you have the same president who is supposed to be doing deep thinking, is the same president who should be meeting Vasukuru, is the same president who should be, and then those who are left to do thinking actually don't do thinking.
Okay. I'm hoping that we can get Honorable Kabyanga on so that he can be able to answer some of the questions that we need there. Yes, Honorable Kabyanga, some of the questions, especially raised by Honorable here and Charles and Doctor, give us the facts, but also, how do you know this is the outfit of ADF or any of those that was defeated earlier?
Thank you, Bwana Nyangweso. I don't know whether you are getting me now. Are you getting me?
Yes, we do. Go
yes,
ahead,
thank
Honorable.
you very much, Bwana Nyangweso. Good evening, viewers, and good evening, my fellow panelists. I would like to congratulate my brother Mapinduzi upon the new appointment, and I just look forward to working with him, and I welcome him to NRM. On Friday, at around 11 p.m., we woke up to a very, very sad moment when suspected rebels of ADF crossed into Uganda and hacked students at one of the secondary schools in Kasese district, and to be specific, in Bukonzo West, just 2 kilometers from the border with the DRC. And by the time they left, they had already hacked to death 39 students, 22 girls and 17 boys. And they also murdered another 3 people on their way. And they also cut some few others, but they didn't die on spot. They were admitted in hospital, and one of them, an old woman, also passed away last night, and she was buried today. So the total number of people dead are now 43. And immediately after doing that heinous act, they crossed back to DRC. It was very sad, and it was really something very heinous. When you reach the scene, you couldn't really believe it. And the 17 boys were actually burnt beyond recognition. The bodies are now in Fort Potro and Ibuinga Referral Hospital, and the DNA team arrived yesterday from Kampala to carry out tests, and then they are also going to carry out tests on parents to match their DNA. So there are 17 parents who have not yet seen their parents waiting, or their children waiting for those bodies, but also there are 6 other students who were abducted by rebels, and therefore there are close to 23 parents who have not yet seen their children. It was something which took everybody by surprise. I think there was a bit of we had been experiencing peace for close to 20 years now, because the last time ADF entered, it was in 1996. They stayed around. We worked tirelessly, UPF and even the Wananchi, to fight ADF, and by 2003, ADF had already left Kasese completely. Kasese was cleared, and they went and established their camps in DR Congo. So we have been having a few infiltrations, but we would act on them seriously. But in Kasese, there has not been any filtrations for the last 20 years. Some of those infiltrations have been in Bundibujo and in Toroko mainly. So Kasese people had somehow relaxed, and therefore this took us by surprise. There were enough forces at the border, both in DRC and the Ugandan side. So I think I don't really know exactly what really happened, but we are trying to investigate. We have found there were some gaps which we need now to really fill. And obviously, the main suspect is the ADF, but there are also other angles which are being investigated. For instance, there were angles within the school. People were fighting, and these wrangles have been going on for the last 10 years. And also one other thing we are trying to, we are now casting our net wide. This school had only 65 children, and those children, more than 50%, were admitted to the school 2 weeks before this incident. There are some who were even admitted a week before, but then it had also turned into some vocational school. There are even some here who were convinced by the director that they should come for a short time because their financials were coming, and he wants them to meet many students. Because I went for burial of one of the girls. She was 21. She has completed senior 4 at I think Cardinal Suga Memorial Secondary School, and she was convinced by the director to come and learn tailoring. So she had only spent 1 week at school. But if you find out from the neighborhood, they say the director was convincing people to bring children. She would pay them to stay for 1 week. After the financials have gone, they go back. And indeed, those financiers who are Canadians came, and they left the school that Friday morning. And in the evening, the school was attacked. Well, UPDF responded, and the police, and now the troops have been increased at the border. Obviously, people had shifted from near the border, and most of them had gone to the town center for safety. But right now, they have started going back. We have upped security at the border, both on the side of Uganda and the side of Congo. And there is a lot of deployment now in Virunga National Park, trying to follow those rebels. I am very optimistic they will get them because there are so many leads. But also the route which they used from the border to the school is a densely populated area, and they just moved freely, and they bypassed even people, but people were not so suspicious because we have been having relative peace for over 20 years. And it seems they had wrecked the place properly because they really knew where they were going. We even suspect there were some people who were guiding them and who must be even locals. We are trying to trace all those leads because we are getting several leads. And just as panelists have said, I've had Mapinduzi, I've had our sister, the professor talking, and then I've had Romushana. Yes, there are so many questions which are being asked, but right now we are trying to get as much information as possible so that we can really look for solutions to ensure we prevent this to happen again. So far, there are no more threats. Security is tighter, but I've just received reports somehow located the area where those people are, but obviously they are carrying some children, so attacking them has to be a bit very tactical. So it really happens. It was a very gruesome incident, but we should also know that ADF is a terrorist group which is well determined, and for them, what they want is to make news, make people hurt. And we should also know that UPDF has hit all the big camps in Congo, and right now they are small groups. They are no longer in big camps, and those small groups of 10 to 15, 5 are even more dangerous because they are very complicated to trace, and therefore people at the border need to be very vigilant. And you should also know that apart from what happened in Kasese, they are still planning, even planting bombs in Kampala, but security in Kampala is very tight. That's why they have actually discovered so many cells in Kampala, and they have thwarted their plans early enough. So even at the border, we are going to be more vigilant now that we have seen that the peace we have been enjoying for more than 20 years has been disrupted. We are going to be more and more vigilant. Right now, we are trying to mobilize LOCs to tighten their belts, to go back to the basics. We have to look at which people come in and where are they coming from. But obviously, the border is very tricky because everybody comes there for business. And our border is very porous. People can cross at any crossing point. So I think we are going to assure we tighten security at that porous border. The president obviously directed immediately. They have brought in more troops, and even commandos have come. They have gone to Virunga to assist the ground forces. Air Force is also working effectively well. Now we have also discovered that some of the rebels were using the Lake Edward. So the Marine team is also already on the ground trying to assure the lake is also secured. Otherwise, in Kasese, people were in somber mood from since Friday, but now the situation is getting calm slowly. Probably it will calm down completely when we have buried the other 17, and probably after we have seen the other 6 who were abducted. But it was very unfortunate. We shall try by all means to see that such a thing doesn't happen again. We are going to, we are appealing to the population.
Honorable, we seem to have lost you again, but thank you for the details you've given us there. I think let me come to Dr. Sarah. Doctor, looking at what the context built by the Honorable there, giving us the history, but also giving us the facts on ground, what has happened, the pursuit, what is being done to remedy the situation, are we secure as a country? And what should Ugandans do in this position?
Thank you. Thank you, Timothy, and thank you, Honorable Kabyanga. I think we are secure as a country. First of all, I think as a country, there is no state at which you can claim to be secure. Every country in the world invests in security. That's why security budgets are among the biggest. Why? Because all countries live with the existential threat of either an attack from an individual, because sometimes it's just civil relations. You've seen how in the US, one disgruntled kid goes and shoots down a number of kids. So those are maybe on the civil side. But also even those we consider to be the most peaceful countries on earth have actually the most heavily facilitated, biggest securities, intelligence groups and all that. You ever just go on Google and look at the 20 most highly skilled, highly facilitated, and highly deadly military outfits? They're not going to be from Africa. They're all from those countries that look to be peaceful. So what does this tell us? No country is immune to insecurity. But for us to get this peace we need, there are certain steps we must do. Because even those that appear to be peaceful are peaceful because they have invested in making that peace peaceful. And so as a country, what assures us of our security? The kind of responses that the government has to these kinds of incidences. I mean, when we saw what happened in Kasese, even we in Kampala feared. But what do you see? They have been, like you've heard, they have heavily deployed in the area. They are commandos on ground. But as Mr. Romshana said, I think it is important that the security, the intelligence gathering is up top-notch, okay? And if that can be improved, then maybe we shall avoid these incidences. The communities have to know that security begins with them. Actually, in many of the advanced countries, it is the people who are always the first to report. I know sometimes that is played out negatively, that it goes racial, it goes against immigrants. But they are always the first to say there's this person, that house has very many young men who keep coming in at this time and going, we don't know. And of course then security comes in, and police, that case, comes in and checks and finds, oh yeah, there are 5 young men staying together, they're just international students. But if they're not international students, then you want to understand who they are. So the community has a role to play. We as civilians have a role to play. Of course it means it's going to encumber how we live our lives. Because we as Ugandans are just a happy people. By the way, we are ranked among the happiest people on the continent. And you know, Ugandans want to be happy, spend their evenings happily, watch their football, have their drink, and go home. So this means we are not going to be able to enjoy those things casually. Even as you're enjoying those things, please be on the watch out, okay? Because if our people in Kasese had done that, maybe this would not have happened. So, back to your question, we are secure because there's no state at which you can say there's no threat. But security is reinforced by the different actions the state undertakes on a daily. Thank you very much.
And I'll leave a question with Honorable Mapenduzi. The question is, how do we deal with this challenge of different outfits? Because even as Honorable was speaking, said suspected ADF. And being that you are from Gulu and having seen this firsthand with the LRA, you'll be giving us solutions there. But let me read some of these messages that have come through. Good evening, Timothy and the panel there. Thank you for the program. I remain with very many unanswered questions. ADF is a real existent in DRC. It's nasty. It's happening with many souls and deceased. But the minister helps us to answer the following. Let the minister help us answer the following questions. How did Uganda come to know that this was carried out by ADF? How in a few hours did they know that ADF had spent 2 days planning this attack? How did General Dick Olum of the Operation Shuja be the one addressing citizens, leaving the DPC, the barracks commanders in the area, because at least they were 5 kilometers away from the crime scene? The last one, why is the Ministry of Education overshadowing the Ministry of Defense, Security, Internal Affairs, which is at least, I believe, they are very concerned and should be answering these questions. Hannington from Lubaga there. Thank you very much, Hannington. Maseruka comes in and says, according to Uganda security, police and UPDF are now becoming like primary school teachers, just waiting to look for salaries, messages from their government, but the cases of their duty are just sleeping. The recent attack in Somalia, Kasindi in DRC have remained alert, okay? Prince in Abraham from Iganga says, thank you for the show, thank you very much. We condemn the video, and I see some people sending it to us here. Ndaulaham from Chotera.
But is that video real?
We condemn the video. However, they have got it, we still don't want to show it here. Our phones are part of security. This should be put in security gadgets to the students, the police, and the army, okay. Numerous messages coming through. Okero from Tororo says, allow me to ask this question. How long will it take for the generals and the army forces to learn a lesson in what is happening in the country, and when will we be graduates? Okay, I think he's graduating there. But let's take a quick break, and when we come back, Honorable Mapenduzi will be answering the question. How do we deal with the challenge of ADF? How did Gulu handle the LRA, but also as a country, can we feel secure in our own country? This and more after this break.
Ebiseera by'okuzaayo abaana mu masomero tebiteekwa kukaluubiriza n'akatono. Eno kusimba nnyiriri mpanvu kano kalipagano ka bidduka. Simanyi kuzunga na banka siripsi? Kati osobola okusasula school fees z'omwana wo ate n'okola n'ebirala ntoko ku ssimu ye ey'omu ngalo. Ekikola kyangu nnyo. Nyiga bunyizi *165*8 ogoberera ebikulagiriddwa oba okozese app ya MTN Momo. Ate kati okola ki olwaleero? MTN Mobile Money Uganda Limited erunganisibwa banka enkulu eya Uganda.
The head of Public Service and Secretary to Cabinet invites all ministries, departments and agencies to participate in the celebration of the Africa Public Service Day to be held on 23rd June 2023 at Kololo Ceremonial Grounds. The theme of this year is the African Continental Free Trade Area will require fit-for-purpose African public administration to succeed. The celebration shall be marked with Inter-MDS Sports Gala from 19th to 22nd June 2023 at Makerere University Sports Grounds. MDS will carry out corporate social responsibility events in their respective communities. There will be a walk and exhibitions by MDS on 23rd June 2023 at Kololo Ceremonial Grounds. The chief guest will be His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda. The public is welcome to the event to interact with government officials.
Ocho mwami musoke njose nekusanga
Ate chichi.
Munange anti gwamanya kunyinyonyola ebintu by'emisolo bino nembitegeera.
Ate chichi leero.
Mbadde kuduuka nempulira nga abakyala bagamba tulina okwewandiisa mu nkola ya IFRIS.
Tukikolanga.
Ate mbadde
kituufu nnyo.
Mbadde sikimanyi na ki.
Eyo y'enkola egenda okutuyamba okulwaninga bizinesi zaffe mu ngeri ya digital.
Etya.
Oba olina okuwandiisa bizinesi yo mu IFRIS osobola okumanya omuwendo gw'ebintu by'olina mu bizinesi yo, enfulumya n'ennyingiza mu bizinesi yo. Awo URA esobola okukola omulimu gwayo ogw'emisolo obulungi.
Nedda mwami musoke kyesitegeera. IFRIS eyingira etya mu bizinesi yange?
Kakati enkola ne IFRIS eyingiza bizinesi yo mu system ya URA kubanga tekyali kya buntu bulamu okugerekera omusolo ogutali mutuufu abateebereza buteebereza.
Ekyo kituufu ddala bannange, ekyo kituufu kubanga mazima obadde omusolo gubadde gwapaala bupaazi ng'ogenda n'osasula omusolo gw'otomanyiko omutwe n'amagulu kwegamba bambi nga tekiriiyo.
Olaba kakati ate n'ekirala IFRIS eyamba okukuuma ebiwandiiko bya bizinesi yo kuba biyinza okubulako, biyinza okukwata omuliro, naye kati wano IFRIS biba biri digitalized.
Bannange nenkola ntya okwewandiisa?
Kyangu nnyo waludde dda. Okwewandiisa mu nkola ya IFRIS genda ku kibanja kya URA www.ura.go.ug awo olondeko e-invoicing awo no ugoberere endagiriro. URA tukulaakulanyize wamu Uganda.
Jerry con. Hey, Master Blaster. Touch him, man. Bang Jerry con with muscle. Those ones who say go for you only. Mundava. Best group is I teach you. When I go to the muscari because of the cover is very far. Is you serious? Is serious you? What? Yeah? You step it on it. Add kilometers to your legs and you get your sugar. We buy meat from Umaru and Umaru refuse to give you enough meat. Mama! Show him that they don't joke with you. Umaru,
okukakaluka n'okulungi kwetaagako omuntu akuyambako n'olwekyo tujja kukuteerawo embeera esaanidde osobole okukola ekisinga awamu teri kitulema. isn't just a girl. She is the future. This is a teacher, a doctor, a community leader, our future president.
She is our family's pride, and as her father, I will protect her from child marriage and talk to her about the dangers of teenage pregnancy. We each have a role to play in empowering our teenage girls to protect them from child marriage and pregnancy, because when we empower them, we empower our nation. Protect the girl, save the nation.
Take action. Report any case of defilement or child marriage to the police or call Sauti 116.
Do you know your architect? Is your architect registered? An architect in Uganda is one registered with the Architects Registration Board, ARB. ARB is a statutory body mandated to regulate and maintain standards and practice of architecture in Uganda. Save money and life that is often lost in collapsing buildings as a result of employing quacks to supervise your construction sites. Remember, only registered architects have professional indemnity in the event of loss of your property. To learn more about the benefits of using a registered architect, visit www.arbuganda.go.ug now. Or call us on 0781 498 823 or find us at PKF Building, Kira Road, Kampala. ARB is here to ensure professionalism in the architectural industry.
This is a quick call. I'm almost out of minutes.
Why rush through such important conversations? Airtel Uganda has made it possible for you to call across all networks in Uganda at the best rates with the new Bona voice bundles. Stay connected anytime, anywhere, with minutes valid for calls on all networks. Dial star 100 star 1 hash. Select voice bundles and select Bona voice bundles today.
Airtel, a reason to imagine.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. In the studio, I'm joined by Dr. Sarah Sali. I'm also joined by Honorable Ojara Martin Mapenduzi. And finally, I'm joined by Charles Rumushana. We're discussing everything ADF. And when we wrap up that big story, we'll be switching to the Russia-Ukraine African leaders that went there and what were they really doing in these two countries, especially on exporting peace. You can be part of the show. Go to our socials there. Drop your comment on this conversation and be part of it, or get to our number 0709 60 92 25. That's our number. Let us know what you think about this. But also on our Twitter handle, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. You'll be part of this conversation. Well, let me get some of these messages before I get to Honorable Mapenduzi. Quite a number of messages, but let me pick out some. One Lubang Kene from Joffrey from Gulu East. Where was the UPDF in this attack? Okay, good question. Also, I'm glad to see Timothy, and I'm sure he will put the show on another level. Thank you very much, Ronald Mivule. Also, thank you, Honorable Kabianga. Indeed, you have shown that you love your people, and cause since the incident, you pitched camp there on the borderline to meet the LCs, okay? Finally, I'll read this one. This is Ivan Sembusi from Kaleru. It says, Timothy, taking this great opportunity to acknowledge His Excellency, the President, and our security agencies to find out where the weaknesses are, mistakes taken, and where the right perpetrators are. Do their best to secure our captives and also make sure the threat is no more. They need to start by intervening, and that is Mr. Sabarwani. Okay, thank you very much for that message. But Honorable Mapenduzi, you saw the war up there in Gulu, especially in the northern region. When you look at this outfit of ADF suspects, as they say, how do we end this challenge? It has been lingering for a while. How do we bring it to an end?
Maybe before I answer that question, there are many people who, based on what you've just read, many people who send messages. There is one particular one. I'm not responding to him, but I thought it would be important to just say this. He made a statement. It's understandable because in such a situation, we all get frustrated.
Yes.
But to say that you know,
that the police and the soldiers are primary teachers
are behaving like primary school teachers who
waiting
just sit
for their government salary.
I would pray this gentleman finds time and gets to understand really what primary school teachers go through. And when you say they just sit and wait, I think that is rather unfortunate. But just to answer the question you have said, you have given. First, the LRA situation in northern Uganda was not just about Gulu. It affected the entire Acholi sub-region. Actually, Acholi sub-region experienced a lot more atrocities. But Teso and Lao and other parts equally experienced a lot of atrocities that were committed on them. But how was this handled? Different people played different roles. The UPDF and other security agencies played their role. They did a commendable job. They tried their best. The community played a big role. The cultural institution, religious leaders, civil society, the international community, different people played there. The only sad part is that it took very long for the conflict to end, for the guns to fall silent, and so many people lost their lives. To this day, there are so many unaccounted for children who, whose families and parents are not sure whether they are alive or not, and so they have continued to this day asking whether and when they would come back home. And of course, I know some of them could have died, and so nobody knows what happened. And just like I gave the example of my, this issue of the Kasese unfortunate and painful situation is something that, just like my elder brother here, Charles, put it, and the other cases we have had should help us to open up in trying to analyze this. And also, as a country, we need to reorganize ourselves, because there is a tendency in Uganda where people wake up after something bad has happened, and then people begin to run around. When we had the bomb blast, a number of occurrences in Kampala, in happening places, you find there is some kind of laxity. Then after we have such an incident, the next day people are trying to be cautious and doing this, and then a few months after, people go back to the usual lifestyle. All right. What happens sometimes back, the security agencies and government, issued directives that, places, where people have events and where many people crowd and should have, cameras and these and different ways of making sure people are safe. And in Uganda, it takes a short time for people to relax and go back to. I think we need to remember that we have to be on alert and make sure that safety and security is number one in every setting. The other thing that we also need to, just like the Honorable Minister put it, a number of cases we have already had should really help government to reflect deeply and ask difficult questions to the different structures that are responsible for this. Because as you put it, if indeed the people who kill our children in this school, if indeed they were around for 2 days or so, what about the structures we have got that government has always relied on? What were they doing? What about the people? And so there is need to be on the alert. And we are going to continue, because the situation, things have changed. The kind of atrocities we have being committed today is different from the kind of, like the LRA story was different. They would be in the bush, the UPDF would run around chasing them. But what about somebody planning a bomb in Kampala? This is different. How are you going to deal with that? In a place that is highly populated, how are we going to deal with that? But also the other challenge is, yes, we shouldn't be first blaming the security agencies, but they have to be on the alert and know that we have a challenge. There are people who will always plan evil, and so we shouldn't give space. But people also need to know that dealing with a group like the ADF or the LRA is challenging, because like the case of the LRA, I you know, by God's grace, I was able to go to Congo in the areas of Obo and the time when General Kavuma and his group were chasing the LRA in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I went and visited them in Obo. We went up to Jemba, Central African Republic, and all that. It reached a point when they would move in small groups, 2, 3, 4 or so. The biggest group would be about 15 people, scattered. So you find, you know, atrocities being committed here, there, and so there is this complexity that has to be also handled. I do not know what the army has established, the number of those who came to attack the school, whether there were a few people or a group of, these are information that we would love to know, but dealing with such a situation is quite challenging when you do not know. And unlike a group that would have a camp, they would have their barracks somewhere, they would be interested in capturing a territory, this is completely different. So we need to be a lot more organized and know that there is this that we have to confront, and we need to avoid the fire brigade style of work, just like Charles put it. Where there is a problem, we appear to be running. We need to be on the alert 24/7.
Let me stay with you before I come to Dr. Sarah. Honorable Mpenduzi, you being an independent member of parliament, this sometimes is...
Welcome to somewhere.
This being that sometimes...
Why do you want to welcome me everywhere?
But someone has welcomed you.
Honorable Mpenduzi, let me stay with you before Charles jumps in.
I don't want to be welcomed everywhere. Please, let's...
Some politicians milk this. When we look at Westgate in Kenya, it brought Raila and Uhuru together to stand for the country. Our divided colors, why doesn't this unite us? Because the students, the parents that have lost lives, yes, I see the anger here from the people who are sending us messages, but what can unite this country and not divide it against a common enemy? Because today it can be Kasese, tomorrow it can be somewhere else.
If there is any leader in this country, and to be specific, if there is any politician in this country who does not see what has happened as a problem for all of us. When children are murdered in cold blood, attacked in school, Uganda's future, I don't think there should be any politician or political party that would you know, come with a different story and forgetting the painful situation we are faced with. So this, we have to be united. But as we are united, we should not be afraid to say there could be laxity here, there are gaps here, because we should help ourselves as a country to know where we are not doing well, to know where the gaps are, so we can do much better, because it's about protecting lives. And whether you belong to FDC, NRM, NOP, and so on, you have one country called Uganda. And unless you want to create another, but there is one country called Uganda. We have a people, and the people we all claim to be serving or working for, and so we should be united. We should be united even the more and try to look at how to deal with this frankly and soberly.
Dr. Sarah, as a scholar, what lessons do we draw from this, both our history and this incident, and how do we move forward as a country? Not tearing each other apart, but uniting ourselves because there's one common enemy.
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, there's one common enemy, and I haven't gotten a sense of disunity on this matter because the actual crime is gruesome. This one, you even don't need to look at political parties or class. If you see those videos, you just get scared as a being, okay? So I don't think anyone would want to milk any political mileage out of this. But what can we do about this? And for me, what has remained with me is how we knew they were around for 2 days and how we did nothing. And one of the things I've been wondering, could it be because maybe for a long time the relationship between the population and the security forces has been a little bit problematic? Well, I haven't been in Lubiriha, so I don't know what the terrain there is. But you see, in other places, sometimes, and maybe why even there are such derogatory statements, people associate security forces, and I mean the police, because that's the one we interact with more, either with beating or with acts which actually put the citizens on a weaker point of bargaining. So then that creates a lot of distrust. And so they don't see the police as and the armed forces as the people who guarantee our sleep and our enjoyment. They see them as a problem. But it also maybe comes from a long history where, I mean, right now with the subsequent years, we've seen increase in life expectancy. But for a long time, in the past, I mean, the average life expectancy for men was around 47 and for women 52. But we've now moved to the 60s. So I kept asking myself, have we normalized death so much that we don't care about prevention of death? But you know, we've been told that probably it had been peaceful for a long time. Maybe we forgot about the sleeper cells. So who was supposed to identify that there's a sleeper cell, especially since there's this latent threat of ADF all the time? But I think for me, this is the opportunity for us to work on our relationship with the security forces so that we know that we are part and parcel. So we don't perceive the police as people who just draw salaries. For heaven's sake, they work hard and earn very little, okay? But of course, we've been told security people work on, their calling is not really money, but we have to appreciate that they have basic needs and sometimes maybe the pay is little. But what I'm trying to say is that they perform much more than actually what they earn. So seeing them as people who just pick their pay is an insult. But also that means that we should form a partnership. We should form a collaboration so that if I see something that is not clear, I can easily call. I know in Uganda, with the level of class that people have here, socioeconomic class, people can easily call because we all have contacts of this one and the other one and the other one. And say there's something I'm thinking which is not clear. But how much of that is in such a community? That when people in a village or in a small town like that see something which is strange, they will easily walk to the police and say, I have seen this, and maybe it's not right. So I think we need to work on that relationship all over. The whole concept of community policing, we used to hear about it. We don't know where it ended. The whole concept of community leaders, I know when we're in trouble, we run to LOCs, but sometimes we have grievances with them when they side in ways that are against us. So, but also to find a way of equipping people and empowering people to be able to make these decisions, to be able to make these reports, I think it's going to be very important, because if we don't, the population ends up on one side, the police is on one side, and then the police does not get the right information at the right time. But also there's this thing, we should stop being complacent. You know, in Uganda, it's like, people have this kind of, they've normalized these kinds of speeches and sayings, which really is a resigned state to fate. But actually we can do something about it. So let us be more empowered and more proactive to prevent bad things than actually resigning to fate, so that when things like this happen, then we all cry. I think it's not right.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah. Charles, coming to you, how can we have the coordination within security agencies, but also how do we prevent any further attacks from any outfit, especially spillovers from Congo and us being there? How do we avoid it from your security perspective?
You see, this security, you have two elements. The first element is the PR. so that the population, what you would call mass mobilization, so that the population does not panic, get out of hand, and become a problem itself. Because the population can be triggered into a deadly avalanche. And this is what you hear now from the politician who is on the ground. We have deployed, we are even doing this. And that's where we come in. You react to what they've told you. You don't react to what you know. Because you don't have your own, I'm assuming you don't have your own capability to do intelligence gathering. So he's told you, we are deploying. We have done massive deployment. That is the hardware. Massive deployment against what? The nature of deployment relates to the nature of the threat. The second one, he said, the camps of the rebels were destroyed. So this statement admits one thing, that the camps were there.
And
right?
that they were known. And that they were known.
Yes, the camps were there. Of course, they got to know them, and then they attacked them, and so he says destroyed. So what does destroyed mean? Were they smashed? Were the elements in those camps killed? Because when you say the camps were destroyed and they broke into small groups, then it means you didn't destroy them. Dispersal of guerrillas is a method of war because it helps in self-preservation. It is in the interest of the state, which is a superior force, to engage, for the guerrilla to accept to engage in fighting. But that's when you have the opportunity to finish the guerrilla. It is in the interest of the guerrilla, one, to move away, to disperse. Because when they disperse, it helps in their concealment. Right? When they are moving away in big groups, then they are slow. But when they disperse in small groups, then they are quicker to move away from the line of engagement. So now you can't get it from the minister now of state in PR. You would probably get it from the Mhanga and the Urum. But these ones relate to hunting. So and when you are hunting, you do three forces. The first force is the main force that will attack the camp. That's the main force. If you are lucky and the main camp accepts to fight, if you are lucky, then you would reduce their number, cause casualties, etc. If you are unlucky, the main camp can disperse. Now it cannot disperse unless it has already organized, planned for where it will go. Now, this is where intelligence comes in. Intelligence must have already established that should they disperse from this camp, they will go to this camp. Right? And these are their lines of withdrawal. So you destroy them before they go for another camp. Now, the moment they start telling you they should have broken in small groups, that means then you lost the war. Because there is no way a rebel force will break into small groups unless it has prepared for that dispersal. It is the most complicated stage. Yes, because for each group, it must have a commander, it must have intelligence, it must have a mode of communication on how they will disperse and converge again. That's the most complex. Now, should they do that, then you know they have developed. Otherwise, a force which has not developed to do that gets defeated completely. It can't even last a week. Now, for 48 hours, that is very possible. If you have been associated with counterinsurgency, you'll be able to know that if they are on radio, like someone can know you are here because of your telephone, the signature of your telephone line. Only it's enough to know that you are here. And it's also enough to know that all of us have converged. One can read from our phones if you knew them. Even the way we came, I came from a different route, but it can be mapped. I came from this end, you came from this end, and we have dispersed. Even the way we disperse going back to our places, you can read it through
the digital
through the what you call the digital map. And the military has those capabilities: voice finding, direction finding, etc. At least I'm very sure we have those capabilities, including knowing how long you stayed in the place. Of course, it can also be deceptive.
Okay.
Yes, if the guy was on radio, you can bring the radio and the radio stays, and the physical body goes. So it will indicate he's been around, etc. But anyway, I have not been able to audit what they did.
How do we prevent this from happening again?
You can only prevent if your intelligence is superior, and intelligence can only be superior if you have got assets. Because you see, intelligence is not so much about reading what they are doing. You must have your own people within them.
Infiltration.
Like the way Mr. Museveni says, we have Kawukumi. Theirs are within you. So they are able to read what you intended to do, but they are working with you. They are your supporters. But for you, do you have within them? And my experience is it is extremely very difficult here because of one, corruption. An asset who is inside is extremely very difficult to manage, very expensive to manage, and you must be professional and delicate. Otherwise, you make a slightest mistake, they will discover him. So how would you pay him? How would you facilitate him? How do you even communicate with him? Now you have your elements here who pay assets in hotels. You just only need to know that at the end of the month, the one who is paying is Romshana, and you follow him. He will be at Sheraton, Samba, and people will begin coming to receive their facilitation or their allowance. And you will get all of them the way you want, including even taking, it can be a disaster. So it's very easy. In other words, the system corrupts to a level. Of course, now there is a bit of reorganization, but the question is at what extent. Professionals are now beginning to take over, but the question is at what cost. Then the memory. Some of these sleeper cells can be even for more than 15 years. But you find the case officer who was following a cell is long dismissed or was transferred and is a bodyguard to some minister. Like that era of yours. The one who was monitoring communication and is able to even interpret codes. The man says, let's meet where we slaughtered the goat. That's a code. It's known between the two. But the one who has been following NRA for 20 years will know where we slaughtered the goat. It means Mapenduzi. You get? But if you remove that officer who was following that, and this group has reorganized, to get a new person who will be able to follow,
start
tracking the institution, the memory will collapse. And then those people who are very, very critical are not the most central.
Okay.
Yes, the ones who are paid well are those who are called directors, heads of departments. But the ones who are on the ground, who have that kind of memory, who are able to read and tell you, I will give an example. We are talking about the RRS situation. We had very good commanders in northern Uganda. Because you remember, let me remind you, I was a resident district commissioner there. Pader. And under me was a brigade, 501, I think. And I also had battalion, 37th battalion under Sichanzi. Now Sichanzi was NRA, Ruel, original. But you see, these are gentlemen, and another one was the Optio, but later on became a division commander, 2nd Division Mbarara. These are people who would tell you, okay, what are they doing? They are playing football. How many are they? They are 8. They are 8, yes. Their camp is 800. So if you follow them with a mobile force of 100, pursuing these 8, be sure you will be ambushed by a camp of 800. Because they will play football around. And the informers will tell you, but they are there playing football. You come, they extend. They go to Chambogo, they again play football. You extend to Chambogo, they extend to Mukono. Kumbe, they are taking you into a killing zone. So if you have someone who knows them with the same, the way they are behaving, either they are taking you into a minefield or they are taking you into this. So how many have that institutional memory? So you will find maybe Mr. Kireba Kandwanaho, those who have been there, maybe Mr. Museveni. But the question is, how about these new ones? So if you are talking about the terrain in Rwenzolis, where are the minefields, the map of the minefields, the memory Kazin had? If you are talking about Congo, do you still have the memory Kazin has had ETC? So you have new players, but how much do they invest in reading, in what? Recapturing the memory? You have, in terms of commanders, in terms of even intelligence gathering, can you be able to go and check in the records who are our contacts with the FUFM, who are our contacts with FEDEMO, who are our contacts with LRA, who are our contacts with the original ADF, who are our contacts here, and who managed them, how were they recruited, how do we re-engage them, how many died, etc. So those you do not have. And then, you see, unless you've broken through the intention of the enemy, because you see, the enemy can operate, put pressure on you, and force you to disperse.
Okay.
So even these reinforcements you're talking about, Mr. Museveni is sending there. One, it's at a cost. Point number two, they must be withdrawn from somewhere. So assuming that was the intention, that you do this here, and the force will be moved from, where is it likely to move the force from to answer this political pressure? It will be from this place, and you create a vacuum there, and they hit there. Now, do you again move there?
Okay. Thank you, Charles. I'm going to ask that gentlemen and ladies will switch a bit and be able to, in these last few minutes, talk about Russia there. Some of the 10 points that were presented by President Ramaphosa, and we had Honorable Ruhakana Rugunda represent the president, both in Ukraine on Friday and Russia on Saturday there. The 10 points were to listen to the different parties. They listened to President Zelensky and then moved on to listen to President Putin. They also talked about diplomatic and negotiations there, de-escalating the conflict both sides, recognizing sovereignty of the countries, some of the security guarantees, opening the Black Sea for grain, humanitarian support, release of prisoners of war, post-war reconstruction, further engagement in the processes there. Those were the 10. But the president, President Putin, said he was thumb-chesting about the second African-Russia summit that is to be held in Russia come very soon. I also know last year, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lovrik, was here in the country and had a meeting with the president. The three major areas were grain, fertilizer, and fuel prices going up, and also the tightening by President of Ukraine on ammonia to Europe. Gentlemen and lady, I'll start with Charles. Your thoughts on this meeting where we had Right Honorable Ruhakana Rugunda represent the president there, and also, was this just for war or for peace? Was it trade or peace? What was the actual gist of this whole story here?
Africa is very central, because I've seen some commentators trying to underplay Africa, underestimate the capability of Africa. Africa is very central. The economies of Europe, including Russia, of course, will not survive in the long run without Africa, because we have the resources, we have the what you would call the hardware. This phone, for these factories to survive, you need to consume more than 5. Actually, you check most of our friends, you move with more than 5 gadgets. Either they do the other Chinese way and produce material that does not last long.
So you can buy more and more and more.
Oh yes, yes. Markets will saturate, but they need our raw materials, and we have the hard raw materials. That's one. The second one, France is running out of water. Did you know that?
No.
Oh, they're running out of water. Actually, in some areas, they're even beginning to ration water. You don't simply build a swimming pool. I'm even advised that Saudi Arabia, their water base is overconsumed between 80 to 90%. So in the long run, we will even have another added advantage of fresh water. You have a lot of water in Kenya underground, that part of the Rift Valley, and also have the Congo basin with a lot of water. Then gas. We are an alternative supply of gas to Europe. We are an alternative to Russia. You know that. In case you resolve the question of the pipeline, the delivery system between the basin, the Congo basin, where we are, and then via Libya and into Europe would be in the business. So we are very critical. First, the fundamental question is, one, whether we are conscious, and two, whether we are organized. Now, in that theater, it's a theater of survival of the artificial. Because their forces are artificial. One, they don't have enough food. We will supply between up to 60 to 70% of world food if we got organized, because we have around 60 to 70% of the Arab land in the world. We are in Africa. You know that. So if we were to get organized, we would have an edge over them in terms of organic food, in terms of supply of food. Of course, we have challenges of seeds. Like now you see India, it has to get seeds from USA, etc. So the other artificial entities you call superpowers, to survive, they must look at routes of trade. So that's why you have a conflict between China and Taiwan in relation to, of course, with US. That strait, it's called the Taiwan Strait?
Yeah.
Yes, that relates to trade. Then Russia has access to the sea, and that's why I have that question of the
Black Sea.
The Black Sea, the Crimea. Russia is battling to have access to the sea. Access to the sea to what? Which markets? Where are the markets? Because in the long run, we will be the markets. So that's why all of them look at, it's either USA, China, USA, Africa Summit, or Russia, Africa Summit. When Russia and USA are looking at Africa, they look at a unified Africa. When they are inviting us, they invite us as an entity, right? When we exist as isolated elements. For us, we emphasize the integration. For them, they look at us as a whole. When they're inviting us for tea, they invite us as a whole. But for us, we exist as separate parts.
Different units.
Yes. Now, so if we united and defined our interests, we can impose, because for them they impose sanctions. The controllers of the other artificial 51% of world economy. Because you see, the wealth we have in Karamoja, the gold we have, for them, they see it in their paper, the dollars. So all the wealth you have must be monetized in their currency. But who actually has the wealth? It's us. So they impose sanctions on Russia. For you, what are you going to impose? What can you impose? Assuming you had the capacity to impose sanctions, assuming you had the capacity to impose your voice, then you would be heard. And so yes, that document is an academic document. It's a very good academic document. But the fundamental question is, how can you ensure your voice is heard? Because you must put your foot down and you must be felt. So two scenarios arise. That one, they will fight themselves to exhaustion. And at that point, they need somebody to come and who has capacity to do critical effort. I don't know how we define critical effort. That extra energy that was lacking for motion to take place, can we provide that critical effort? That if we joined either, that party would win the party. In other words, are we indispensable in this conflict? And my answer is yes. There is a window of our indispensability. That window is there. But I don't see ourselves organized.
Okay.
One, at a conscious level, and two, as a unity. Okay. I don't see ourselves organized. That's why you see, could they be led by RCC?
Let me bring
you see, they had to be led by Ramaphosa. Could they be led by RCC? In other words, can RCC survive without USA?
Charles, let me bring in Honorable Mampenduzi, even as we draw to a close. First, our representatives go to Ukraine, and if you see the body language of President Zelensky, he was really not talking easy, especially not amused that one, that very day they arrived, there was bombing in Ukraine. Two, he was saying our African leaders had flown all this expensive fuel and private jets, money that they should have used to pacify their own countries. Do we have anything to bring to this table to negotiate, especially these 2 points? Looking at what Charles has said, a very good academic document. Your thoughts on this?
I'll start from a different angle. For several hundreds of years, Africa has been behaving like this massive bull, tied very loosely on a rope and being pulled by a kid. And this bull has a mindset that that is its way of life. Does not know how strong it is, and so it's way of life. It is good Africa is beginning to rediscover itself, and I think the decision by the few leaders who went to Russia and Ukraine to meet the two leaders was a good decision. How Mr. Zelensky and Putin received them is not the most important. The most important is that they went and they are going to send a message. Now it doesn't matter because it's understandable. First, the mindset of the Western world, when they think Africa, they think these are people who are constantly in trouble. Unfortunately, sometimes some people think we are inferior. They think we are in endless wars and all that. And so when you go to some of those countries, you are likely to be received with a lot of arrogance. But you see, in peace building, you don't need to mind so much about how someone who is aggrieved, someone who is at war, is going to receive you. It's a process. I hope they don't get tired. I hope the efforts will continue because it's a process. The first time somebody may underestimate. The next time the relationship keeps on building. And peace building is a process. It's not a one-day thing. So people should not judge these leaders who went or judge the process based on this first visit. I think we shouldn't give up. But one very interesting thing is that there was has a lot to just like my brother, senior brother here, Charles, put it. There is so much that Africa has contributed. You can imagine in 1939, during World War II, thousands of African men lost their lives fighting, actually dying for their colonial masters. So many people, especially from West Africa, ended up going to France, going to Germany, going to Italy, losing their lives. They were in the front line. Many of them were carrying things and digging trenches, and they played a big role. Now, it would be bad for somebody to forget how much impact that would have caused on the war. So we have continued to play a lot of roles, but looks like internally, we do not know how strong we are, how much we can do. So we have allowed a culture to develop where we think we are always on the receiving end, you know, and this should also help us to begin to realize that we can actually solve our own problem. Because now, many years back, people thought war, you know, Africa is about war and all that. Now the West is fighting. Putin and Zelensky, they're busy, and these two countries are, and the world has had a serious impact from this. So fighting is not only for Africa, and so peace building is also not only for the West. I have seen, like in Uganda, you know, during the LRA, you know, situation, there are organizations from Italy, like Pac Christi and Egidio, they came, and it's time for Africa to begin to demonstrate how much contribution we can make. And I think it's not wrong for our leaders to say, look, this endless war is not going to help. Many people are dying, but also is having a serious impact globally. And so as people who are affected, we have a duty to air our views, and how we do it is important. But lastly, I think we need to choose where we fall or where we belong. Because when you look at the Russia-Ukraine war, different countries globally have chosen to take sides. There are a few countries that have decided to be neutral. But when you try to study critically their neutrality, then you begin to, you know, either because they don't want to appear or they fear there could be some implication. But many countries in the Western world are either with Russia or with Ukraine. I think Africa needs to boldly say we are for peace, and I think this is the message that these leaders send. And so it's going to be up to Putin and Zelensky and their two countries to begin to realize that, look, it doesn't require a giant to tell you that you are making a mistake that will have very long-lasting impact. Anybody can tell you, and if you have the ears, you can begin to reconsider and reflect and have the problem solved.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Dr. Sarah, we just had Africa-China summit. Recently, I think when Obama left, Biden was the first president to be able to have the African-US summit. We now have approached Russia, and President Ramaphosa was visited by Putin in South Africa. We're going as a bloc. We had 7 leaders there. What are we taking there? And what are we preaching with peace? And these 10-point programs there, do we have anything to pacify in this war? And keeping in mind, wheat went up. It's one of the biggest meal we eat in chapati, chukomando, here in the country. Is it economics? Is it trade? Is it war? What is it we're going to do in these places?
Thank you very much, Timothy. If they had strategic interests, they would be justified. The purpose of politics is to organize interests. Sometimes those interests are, most times they're actually economic, but sometimes they can be cultural and any other kind of things. We've been raised in a generation where we think politics is one compartment, economics is one compartment, culture is one compartment, and the rest. When the imperialists are doing their bit, this is a complete package. They'll give you educational scholarships because it's important for cultural imperialism. They will dictate your foreign policy because it's good for business. So in short, people don't engage in these things for nothing. So if at all they engaged in it for strategic interests, like we hear grain or wheat, fertilizer, and steel, then they would be justified because that's what politics is about. You don't engage in processes for the sake of them. There must be a strategic interest. And so that's one thing. But you see, for starters, at the beginning, Africa was not making any comment. The international media was awash with Africa being mute about this process. Then when Africa decided to take some bold steps, then the international media is about, oh, the mission is going to fail, and oh, finally it has failed. But like the people before me have said, I think this is a bold step. First and foremost, I think it is bold because, for one, it shows the world that Africa is not the usual place that panders to their kind of patronage. It has a voice and it has an opinion. I think for me that's important. But also number two, we need to remember that this is not the first time Africa is engaging in peace missions. I hear, of course, there were those statements that were attributed to some of the leaders to say, what have you done for your own continent? But actually, African leaders have participated in peace building on the continent. We had Chisano in the Juba peace talks. We had Mandela for Burundi. We've had President Kagame for Cabo Delgado in Mozambique. And we had Uganda was the place where they discussed the end of the Biafra War in 1969. Okay, this guy's as the Pope's visit, but it's good the Pope came. But underneath that, we ended the Biafra War. So these things have been there. So it's not true that Africa has not participated in peace building on the continent. They continue to do that. The only difference, I think, most of the peace building missions we've been doing on the continent have been by protagonists within the same society. So probably this is one of the things they are dealing with cross-border and outside the continent. So it is important and it is a good start. Why did the mission seem like it has failed? I think it seemed like it has failed because of very many actors. Okay, you have Putin acting alone, maybe with a few of his backers, but Zelensky is largely being managed by others. So in such a case, it becomes very difficult because if all of you have handlers, you have to listen to what your handlers are doing. So that could be one thing. So for me, it's not a failed mission. It is an important mission to show that what was Africa taking? They said our mission is to bring peace and to bring, let this thing end because this thing is hurting the world and it is hurting us. So I thought that was a very important aspect. And the whole aspect of having foreign actors is to show that maybe Africa is not the only thing which has been managed. Okay? And because, so while we have, someone may allege that we have, wars on the continent which we are not minding, also those wars have a number of foreign actors. So like you can fail on a peace, first of all, even the whole world has failed to solve the Russia-Ukraine problem because there are too many foreign actors beyond the two principles. So is the case in Africa, that even when people want peace, there are foreign actors who are always fueling the war for the things the members have already said, the natural resources, the water, the minerals, and that kind of thing. So that becomes very, very important. Of course, we went there because we have relations with these people. I know some of the attributed sentiments are unfair because I think some parts of the world have not experienced Africa very well. They deal with Africa as some subhuman person. So racism is rife. We, for example, saw it when on the trains that were evacuating Ukrainians, blacks were not being allowed to board, and these blacks had stayed in Ukraine for a very long time. We also know that kids that are born of blacks and Ukrainian people, the mixed race kids, in Ukraine, even before they were put in orphanages, because no family can accept them. In other parts of the world, actually, they do integrate. So these matters have been on, but we need trust and respect. And I think this is a very important step towards trust and respect for African people. So we need a trust and respect for the actors, which maybe was not well delivered, but also for the process. So they mentioned the process, but this process is very significant because in the context where everyone's ego, maybe statehood, is so important that no one's going to back down, this could provide an escape route for mediation. If, for example, I was in the position of Putin and I don't want to be seen to pandering to NATO, and I'm also in the position of Zelensky and I don't want to be seen to being subdued by Russia, this third force of African leaders, and I don't agree that they should take a side. Their side is the side of peace, and it's the side of Africa, could provide an escape route of people to think. Of course, it's still early days. I hope they're not going to fight themselves to extinction because they are all equally armed, and they're all equally powerful, and more things are coming in. We pray we don't get to that level. But for me, this is an opportunity for them to escape and step back and say, well, for the sake of African leaders, I don't know whether they will say that, but if they could say that, that would be a very good thing. So we appreciate the leaders that went, and we need to see more of this. We continue seeing more of this on the continent, but also more of this in the world. Because Africa is not just those people with begging bowls looking for food and hungry stomachs. They have an opinion that they want to assert to the world, and Africa gave the world its civilization, so it can go ahead and
have an opinion on peace. Whether it's taken or not is a different matter. Yes.
Thank you very much. Let me read these 4 messages so that we can be able to call it a night. About Kasese's incident, it still makes my stomach upset. At first, I was angry at security organs supposing to protect the borders and property, citizens of the nation, and this case UPDF in mind. I have high regard for. I am sorry, I must say, however, that there are some laxities in the part of the UPDF. 41 children should be living now and not grieving, and I commiserate with the families there. This is Prince David Chijanangoma from Toro. One more there. Good evening, Timothy. We actually get to realize that there are quacks that have been employed in Uganda's defense system and ICT. Okay, thank you very much. Twine goes on to say, I advise government to construct a wall on eastern border of DRC, even put surveillance cameras and send the army to short-term military expeditions there. Lastly, Ndahura Haman comes in from Chotere and says, thank you for the show. On Ukraine-Russia, Africa only needs to organize themselves, catch up and meet the demands back at home, instead of gambling with peace, with the giants in war. Okay. Very grateful to Dr. Sarah Sali for coming through. Honorable Ojara Mapenduzi, thank you very much. Charles, thank you for coming through on short notice, and we appreciate that. But from us to you, we really appreciate that you spent these 2 hours with us. Till next Wednesday, God bless you and good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.